backgrounds are. That's all I'll say.
I don't know your background, Kurt.
I cannot wait for the day that I can tell people who I really am.
A Russian spy.
That's what I was gonna say.
No, comrade, we save that for later.
We bring out Natty Light strawberry lemonade to drink.
Turns out Astro works for the sec and he's just helping us.
Very personal.
He didn't deny it.
Blink twice if true.
Something I find really interesting about the report is this little paragraph right here. Other broker-dealers restricted trading due to capacity issues. For example, one firm's system created a unique ID for each order, but reportedly reached a limit in the number of unique IDs it was able to create on January 27th. If it failed to create new IDs, that tells me that the technologies used and programmed in these systems are so antiquated that if they couldn't exceed a certain number, that means that you're either running a 32-bit system or your systems are not meant for anything that is in the near future, which is alarming. Also, by saying that they created a unique ID for each order, okay, let's continue on through this. The following day, January 28th, when the firm realized that it would likely run out of unique IDs again, it restricted customers from making new purchases of shares. Now here's the thing. That implies that they have a separate table or a separate place for buying and selling, for opening and closing. But if they allowed for closing only, then that means that their order IDs for closing had enough buffer, but their opening did not. Why would they have different tables like that? Why would that be a relational thing where opening and closing are compartmentalized into two separate things? The buffer for opening runs out, but closing does not. In what world does that make any sense? Why is that buffer constrained on the opening but not the closing?
Debits and credits, I would assume. And
no way.
Sorry. I'm just trying to theorize here. And I went to the bathroom, so I only caught the second half of what you're saying. But
they ran out of space for database entries on their opening orders, but not their closing, which is why they claimed to shut down buying. How does that make any sense?
So like if like the numeric ID is like 9 digits long, for example, right? It went up to like 9999999, and then it couldn't go one digit higher because the ID only has 9 digits. Is what you're saying?
Pretty much, yeah.
Huh.
And now you come down to database structures.
Well, I mean, dude, you'd be so surprised, like, how many large-ass companies are out there that are using, like, SAP as their ERP system, and they're producing, like, billions of dollars of, like, really technical and manufactured equipment that's large as fuck, and their system has a problem where they can't close out, like, work orders, and they have to do it manually, and it's a persistent problem that
I'm unfortunately all too familiar. Not within the finance world, but...
Yeah, I mean, but they're interlinked, right? Because you have finance people that are working with systems that are built by software developers. And there's a lot of, like all these ERP systems come out like out of the box, but the company that is using them out of the box doesn't doesn't have all the things that it needs out of the box for it to work for them. So they need software developers to come in and tweak things. And every time you tweak something, well,
Right.
that's a potential for error. And like there's, for example, there's one company that had this persistent problem in their inventory, like work orders not being properly closed, and it was creating a negative balance on their books in the hundreds of thousands of dollars every month. And their only solution was to just for someone to go in the finance department, figure out what the actual number was, and fix it and adjust it, and then close it out for the month.
Right. Well, so what this tells me is that they have what should be, in my eyes at least, I'm not sure. I want to say they would use relational databases for this type of project. It sounds like they're not, or at least the way that they are relationalizing, if that's a word, it is now. The way that they scaffolded this system is they have two separate tables, two separate containers. So if you have open orders or opening orders, and then you have a closing order, which would then reference this one. Like I would just make it one. Well, I can see the logic of why they would have two separate ones, but nonetheless, if you're telling me that this exceeded, this hit a ceiling, but this was fine, I I don't understand. I don't understand that dynamic. Why would you have a cap on this, but not on your close?
Maybe because the way that the system was.
I understand that close is constantly lagging behind opens, but for this to hit some critical mass, like this is always like n minus one. Think of it
So
like that.
I
Why would
think the I think the problem stems from the fact that when these companies are built, they're using the system that they were given at the time, and then over time, as the company gets larger and progresses, it becomes more complex. But they're still using the same legacy system that they started with, because for them to rehaul the whole thing, that's a fucking huge project that would take a lot of time, and the company doesn't stop, right?
but
So you can't.
I agree with you on that, but logistically, why? Like,
Because they
already.
weren't anticipating it when they built it. That's
Well,
it.
just
That's
even forget the semantics of it. Just think logistically in a raw situation, why you would have a critical mass occur on your opens, but not your closes. You have an n minus one problem. Closes are constantly lagging behind the count of that of opens by some degree. You could call it an n minus x, whatever it is. Close is always equal to open minus x. Why would this hit a critical mass, but then by shifting to close only, your close does not have a critical mass? That makes no sense. That literally, logically, does not make any sense. And this is coming from an ex full stack web developer, by the way, and everything developer. This does not make sense. As I've had almost a decade of experience with software development, this makes no sense. Because the moment you shift to closing position only, your close should hit a critical mass too. And you can't just convert databases like this, like that. And if you could, why didn't you do it for this? But if the GameStop situation forced you into a pickle where you're running out of unique IDs to generate for open orders, then eventually that should cascade into your closing when you shift to close only. Why didn't it happen for closings? Because it's all lies? That's what I'm the proponent of. I'm just trying to force the hand of whoever fucking came up with this garbage. That's what happens when you do dev work in a production environment. True. Someone clip that. Share it. Please. There's zero reason. Zero reason.